This is a meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee for HRM, and we do have a quorum. So I'm going to start the meeting. My name, by the way, is Hugh Millward. I'm chairing the meeting. I'll start the meeting by calling a roll call, and that will allow members to introduce themselves, and so the clerk can check that your camera and audio are working. So I'll just go through the list here. Councillor Becky Kent, are you here?
I am. Thank you,
Hello,
Mr.
Becky.
Chair.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you fine and see you. Annika Ropel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Annika, thank you. Miles McCormick.
Here, Hugh.
Yes, I see you there, Miles. Paul Barry has sent his regrets, so we'll move on to Andrew Taylor.
I'm here. Yes.
Hi, Andrew. Milena Casanavicius.
I am here. Thank you.
Hello, Milena. Elizabeth Pugh. Elizabeth Pugh.
Sorry, I'm here. I'm just
Okay,
going to come
good.
on twice in order to get my video working on a different device. So
Oh,
if you see me
Oh.
twice, that's why, but I'm only here once.
okay. It's only one of you. Peter Zimmer. Peter Zimmer.
He's
No.
not currently on the call right now, and we haven't received any regrets from him.
Okay, well, let's hope he joins then. Brittany McLean is the new Bicycle Nova Scotia representative. Are you here?
I am here, thank you.
Hello, Brittany. Now, Mohammed Ehsan, I don't think he is here, and he has not attended for the last four meetings of this committee. And we've tried to contact him and failed. So according to the administrative order, the relevant section, that we would deem that he has left the committee, and I will ask staff to therefore go into the procedure for appointing a substitute. Does that make sense, Katie?
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, okay, fine, thank you. So the staff members present, David McIsaac, Supervisor of Active Transportation. Are you here, David? Yes, I see you. I don't see you, but there you
Yeah.
are. Okay.
Now I'm on kind of I find when I do this from home with Zoom, it can be a little bit glitchy, so you might not see too much of me just to save bandwidth, but hello, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine, thank you. Katie Campbell, I've already mentioned, is our legislative assistant. Alicia Wall is our legislative support, and you are both here, I believe.
Yeah,
As a
I'm here.
Chair.
Yeah. And I see Krista Vining is here too, also with the staff department. And we'll proceed with the land acknowledgement. I'll just read it out. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And we're moving on to item 2 in the agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the April 21st meeting, which was the draft minutes were forwarded to you. I'll ask if any committee member sees errors or omissions. No? Okay. In that case, I need a motion to approve and a seconder to approve.
So move.
So moved. I
Second.
missed it. Sorry.
Peter Zimmer is here now, and he moved it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, and Miles
Oh,
seconded.
Peter's. Okay, so Peter's here. All right, good. Thank you. Okay, so we have a mover and seconder. Those in favor of approval, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. By the way, you do this Zoom allows you to raise your hand electronically. You'll notice that. And any opposed, please say nay or raise your hand. Okay, so that is approved unanimously. And we can now move on to item 3, approval of the order of business and approval of any additions or deletions to the agenda. Katie, are there any additions or deletions?
There are no additions or deletions today.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'll call for a motion to approve the order of business, and we need a mover and a seconder.
I can move that, Hugh. Douglas here.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
And that's seconded. Okay, very good. Thank you. Again, I'll call the question. Those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And any opposed say nay or raise your hand. Okay, again, that's the motion is carried unanimously with the minutes approved. With the order of business approved as circulated in your agenda. So item 4, business arising out of the minutes. There is no business arising out of the minutes, so we can move to item 5. That's a call for declaration of conflict of interest. If any committee member feels they have a conflict of interest relative to the agenda, please declare it now. Okay, none. Thank you very much. And now we move on to the real business today, which is, well, we have two presentations actually. The first one is a staff presentation that was deferred from the last meeting. It's regarding the Brunswick Street and Rainy Drive Complete Streets project. And Catherine Peck is going to present that, I believe. Are you here, Catherine?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Now I just, what's going on here? Sorry, just give me one moment to get my screen set up here.
Okay.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we see it full screen now.
Perfect. Okay, so I am, my name is Catherine Peck. I'm the landscape architect with the Transportation Planning Group in Planning and Development. So I am also the project manager for the Brunswick Street and Rainy Drive Complete Streets project. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the project and give you a rundown. Some of you may have seen parts of this presentation previously through the YouTube video that's online or in the public engagement. But if not, I will take you through it. So a bit of background on the project. This project is coming out of the Integrated Mobility Plan as approved by Regional Council in 2017. The IMP identifies various potential protected bikeways, local street bikeways, and multi-use paths to create in all ages and abilities the AAA cycling network throughout the urban center. And within the IMP, Brunswick Street and Rainy Drive are proposed as part of the bikeway network. So this project encompasses Brunswick Street between Cogswell Street and Spring Garden Road, as well as the portion of as Rainy Drive from Cogswell to Gottingen, and then that little piece of Gottingen between Rainy Drive and Brunswick Street. Most people think of that little piece of Gottingen as actually being Rainy Drive, which is why we left Gottingen out of the title of the project. So the policy direction, again, it's guided by the Integrated Mobility Plan, Action 121, identifying strategic corridors, existing road corridors that are key to regional traffic flow, transit, goods movement, and active transportation, and develop plans that will guide their development over time. Again, Brunswick Street is identified as an all ages and abilities bicycle route, and the AT plan also identifies Brunswick Street as a candidate bicycle route. So within functional planning, we do have a higher vision of the corridor's functionality as a street and as a place. So looking at it both as a way of moving people and vehicles through the street, as well as a place. Being at the base of Citadel Hill, it has very high place value, as the Citadel is the historic center of our city. It's also sort of the western gateway to the downtown. It connects the north end into downtown, as well as sort of borders the entertainment district. So it's a very important part of our city. It's also a missing link between the Common and Dalhousie, as well as connecting from the north end of the Commons to downtown. So we want to make those connections. So the design objectives for the project, we're looking at ways to enhance the pedestrian realm, make it more comfortable for pedestrians and those walking and rolling, develop a AAA bicycle facility. Currently there is an on-street bikeway, but it is not protected, while continuing to accommodate vehicular traffic, including trucks and buses. A portion of the street between Sackville Street and Sackville Street and Cogswell Street is a truck route. And there are a couple of bus routes that run between Duke Street and Cogswell Street, although there are no stops along Brunswick. So in terms of the off-street elements that we're looking at, the rationale that we've developed are looking to expand the pedestrian space and resolving some pinch points that currently exist along the corridor. We want to ensure adequate separation between pedestrians and cyclists, as well as between cyclists and motor vehicles. Providing adequate buffer space between cyclists and vehicular traffic, as well as PEDs, according to both NACTO and TAC recommendations, to the best ability that space allows, as well as creating opportunities for seating and other amenities, making it, again, more of a place and creating a more comfortable environment. So we had some guiding principles that we were looking at. So again, encouraging cycling by enhancing the user experiences and safety. The objectives were improved infrastructure as well as the AAA facility. And then looking at doing that by extending and connecting the existing Brunswick Street bikeway, creating connections to the Commons, Cogswell Street and Spring Garden Road, as well as the Sexton Campus multi-use path that exists. The creation of the raised or protected bike lane and separating cyclists from other user groups. The improvement of pedestrian experience through durable and smooth walking surfaces, universal accessibility best practices. So, fixing depressed curbs, making sure we've got tactile warning indicators, adjusting grade changes where possible, and then making sure that things are safe for all user groups as well, trying to narrow the street to reduce vehicle speeds and providing adequate buffers. We wanted to improve the public realm and the amenities. So again, the street as a place to spend time, not just somewhere to move through. So we want to look at ways to beautify the streetscape, burying existing overhead wires, enhancing the lighting, so getting rid of the existing overhead fixtures and putting in some more of the downtown decorative lighting, and then adding benches, art, planting, and things like that to enhance the street. And then there are functional uses along the corridor as well, making sure that the businesses that exist primarily on the east side of the street have adequate loading access and what the parking needs are for those businesses, and how we can maintain access for all those businesses. And then again, it is a vehicular corridor that we need to maintain as well. So we want to make sure that north-south vehicular movement in the downtown area is continued, and looking at the impacts of the redesign of Brunswick Street and how that impacts vehicular traffic. So moving into the project, we did have some basic design requirements that are based on the municipal design guidelines, also known as the Red Book, as well as industry best practices. So as far as the space that we're allocating for cyclists, we are looking at a bi-directional or two-way bikeway. So it has a 3-meter minimum. We're looking at a minimum of a 1-meter buffer between motor vehicles and cyclists and a minimum of 0.6 between pedestrians and cyclists. However, we prefer to do 1.2 meters wherever possible. For pedestrians, we're looking at a minimum of a 1.5 meter sidewalk. Again, 2.1 is preferred, but a 1.5 is the bare minimum. And then a minimum of a 1.5 boulevard or amenity space, which is in this case doubles as the pedestrian buffer between peds and cyclists. So we want that 1.5 boulevard, but the bare, there's a little bit of a little bit of differing there in the guidelines because we don't have guidelines for this type of facility. As far as the space for motor vehicles, because it is a truck route, we have a minimum 3.3 meter travel lane plus the 0.37 or 0.4 meter gutter. And then any parking we're providing, we need 2.2 meters plus 0.37, 0.4 for the gutter, and then consideration of the loading needs for the businesses. So those are sort of the fixed dimensions that we were working with, trying to fit everything into the existing right-of-way. We have completed public engagement. There was, due to COVID restrictions at the time, everything was done online. The survey was posted online on August 24th and was open until September 30th, as well as a video posted on YouTube, which is still up. We got 1,100 survey responses and I believe just over 300 views on the YouTube video, which we were quite happy with. That's far more than we would get at a typical public meeting. We presented 3 concepts to the public, a concept that focused all these sort of extra space, so the space that wasn't already predetermined as being pedestrian, cyclist, or motor vehicle, putting all that extra space either to pedestrians, an option that put it all to green space, and then an option that sort of balanced the two. So the preferred designs by segment. So along the corridor, there are 4 segments. There's Cogswell to Duke Street to Sackville Street, and then Sackville to sort of just south of the Cambridge Suites Hotel, and then Cambridge Suites to Spring Garden Road. I'll go through each segment separately, just so you can see what each cross section looks like. And they're separated because of the width of the right-of-way. So the Cogswell Street to Duke Street, so we're moving from the north end south, that is our widest segment at 23.3 meters for the right-of-way, so it is quite generous. We have what we've looked at here. You can see the diagrams. They're all color-coded and they will all match. So the purple areas show the sidewalk. So, we are maintaining the east curb in almost all of these segments. So the existing east curb is 3.2 meters. So that's moving from the right-hand side of your screen over. Then we are maintaining parking loading space on the east curb. The reason for that decision was that the majority of businesses on the corridor are on the east side. So most of the existing parking and loading needs are on that side of the street. We have our 2 through lanes. And then as we move over, we have a 1 meter buffer, which is where signage and lighting will go, or 3 meter bikeway. And we have a very generous 3.3 meter landscape buffer. So this is somewhere where we can plant trees, put benches, do larger group seating. It allows the opportunity for, if there are businesses along here that still want to have patios, we can strategically determine where we're placing our trees to allow those to happen and things like that. And then we have a 3.5 meter sidewalk. And you can see just under the fellow walking with his dog, that's where the existing curb line is. So we are making that sidewalk a little bit wider. We could potentially make the sidewalk really wide, but we felt that the better option was to sort of balance things out and put in a generous landscape buffer. The one downside to this, as with all of the concepts, is we are permanently restricting curb access on the west side of the street. So all concepts will maintain curb access on the east side only and do remove it from the west side. So our next segment, going from Duke Street to Sackville Street, this one is about 2 meters narrower at 21.3 meters. So again, the only real difference here is on the left side of the diagram. You'll see the sidewalk is 3 meters wide, and then the landscape buffer is 1.85. The sidewalk is still a little bit wider than what exists currently, but not as generous as in the previous segment. And moving south, we get to Sackville Street to the edge, sort of the corner of the Grafton Park apartment building, where the apartment building and Cambridge Suites Hotel meet. This is our narrowest segment at 17.3 meters. For this segment, parking is removed from both sides of the street, so there will be no more on-street parking or loading, with the exception of the existing accessible parking space that exists there's an accessible parking space that exists sort of in between Sackville Street, between Cambridge Suites and Grafton Park. There's a little office building there. So that accessible parking space will remain, but all the other parking is removed. We are making the sidewalk a bit wider. Again, you can see where the existing curb is, and we've managed to bump it out to be 2.4 meters. And we have a 1.2 meter landscape buffer here as well. So this is the portion of the street that sort of borders the Department of National Defense property and that very large retaining wall on that south part of Sackville Street. And finally, we have the southernmost portion. So that's Grafton Park to Doyle Street. And there, again, we've got, in this case, what we've done is what's considered the pedestrian focused. So you will see we have a very wide sidewalk, and part of the reason for that is to maintain the ability for the businesses on the corner to put out patios. Currently, they take away the parking spaces to put out patios in the summer. We wanted to ensure that that option was still viable because we wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to take parking any longer to be able to put out a patio. So we have a 4.1 meter sidewalk. So you can see how much wider the sidewalk is getting. In this case, we don't have the space for the tree buffer. So what we're proposing is a half height curb grade separation. So instead of doing a full 6-inch curb, we would be doing a 3-inch curb so that for those, folks who are using a guide dog or a cane, there is a detectable edge that can be followed to help assist with that separation. And you would also have the lighter color concrete adjacent to the black asphalt to help with the contrast as well, to make it more obvious that this is where pedestrians belong versus this is where cyclists belong. And again, all parking is removed from this stretch. And then this is where the project joins into the existing piece that was built between Doyle Street and Spring Garden Road. So there is that very wide sod boulevard that exists that was built out in cooperation with the developer to make sure that we have space in the right of way there to build this facility and then connect over to Sexton Campus. The other piece of the project is Rainy Drive. So we looked at several options for Rainy Drive. Rainy Drive was actually not part of the public consultation. We asked general questions about it, but this diagram hasn't been shown to the public to date, just because there were a lot of internal conversations that were happening at the time about what we could and couldn't do. So what we're looking at for Rainy Drive is, again, raising the bicycle facility. So currently it is protected by bollards, but we want to raise it and make it a more formal AAA network, part of the AAA network. So we have a 2-meter sidewalk adjacent to Citadel Hill with a 1.8 meter landscape buffer, or 3-meter bikeway with a 1-meter buffer between the drive lane and the bikeway. And then we have removed parking from the south side, and we're maintaining all the parking on the north side of the hill. And then we're maintaining the existing sidewalk width on the north side as well. While we're removing some parking, we are also able to extend the length of parking availability. So we should be able to regain some spaces on the north side from the south side. So it's not a complete loss of parking. But in conversations with parking services, they weren't concerned with us removing that. Oh, so I failed to update this based on a few things that have happened. So we're looking to move to TSC next month, so in June, and then Regional Council will follow likely in early July. And then once the functional plan has been approved by Council, the design is moving to Anne Sherwood's group, Project Planning and Design, to do detailed design. Whether that is done in-house or through a consultant, we don't know yet. But the intention is for this to be constructed during the 24-25 construction year. So that concludes my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen for now. I can bring it back up if we need to, but just makes it easier for me to see people. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Catherine. That was very useful. And I'm sure there will be some questions. I do have a speaking list here, and I'm going to just call on people in order. I'm starting with Councillor Kent.
No, Hugh, I don't have any questions today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Annika Ropel?
Yeah, hi. I just had a quick question about where this path is going to intersect with Spring Garden. Is there any plan for moving that crosswalk in terms of when connecting over to the library and the campus?
So as far as exactly how the crossing treatment at Spring Garden Road is going to work, that is part of a bigger exercise that we are looking at and will be evaluated further in the detailed design phase. There are several issues at play with that intersection, both from a motor vehicle point of view, a pedestrian point of view, and a cyclist point of view. And it's sort of beyond the scope of what I'm doing right now, but it is something that we are aware of. And we know that, you know, from a cyclist point of view, keeping the crossing on the same side as the bike lane makes sense, as opposed to having to make you cross and cross. But yeah, we haven't fully resolved that intersection yet, but it is on the radar and is something that we are considering.
Yeah, brilliant. It's already kind of a very interesting intersection without a bike lane connecting there.
Yeah,
so
we're looking at, because it's not just the Brunswick Spring Garden intersection that's the problem. There's issues coming out of Doyle Street and then with Queen Street, so it's sort of that whole movement. And then also what happens with the transit only pilot that's happening this summer, like if Spring Garden Road becomes transit only for those few blocks, that changes things too. So there's a lot of questions to be answered before we can fully answer that one.
Okay. Thank you, Annika. Did you have any other comments or questions?
Oh, yeah, if I can sneak another one in there. I also just had some questions around with those bidirectional intersections path. What are the considerations being made to when they cross intersections where people aren't going to be looking for them coming from the opposite direction as regular traffic flow?
Thank you for asking that, because I actually left that out of my presentation. There will be bike signals. So we are going to be looking at the use of bike signals at the Gottingen Street and Sackville Street intersection, Sackville Street most importantly. My people on my team are currently doing a bit more of the traffic modeling. We've been doing a lot of what ifs and what if we do this, what if we do this, and trying to figure it out. But bicycle signals will be used, whether or not it's a bike phase or it's a leading bicycle interval or exactly what that looks like, we don't know. But we are well aware of the fact that we will have contraflow bikes and people making movements where they're not expecting bikes. So we want to make sure that bicycles will have their own time to go, separate from cars.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's move on to Miles McCormick. Do you have questions or concerns?
Yeah, the question I had was that Duke intersection with Brunswick Street. So that, would there be lights there also, that corner for pedestrians and bikes?
So the crossing, moving across
towards the Metro Center. Yeah, when you cross.
So on the Duke Street side, there wouldn't be cyclist signals. We would be looking at where if we need two-stage turn boxes and how that will work.
Okay.
But on the Gottingen Street side, there will be bicycle signals, because there's no formal bicycle facility on Duke Street. So putting in signals doesn't make sense on the Duke Street side.
Okay.
So the signals would be for the north-south movements, not the east-west movements.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Miles, thank you. Andrew Taylor.
None from me, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Milena Casanavicius.
Hi there.
Milena.
Hi, yes, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for the presentation. Can you just repeat again what you said about the portion where there would be, but I can't remember what you said, the curb to distinguish for those who use long white canes, and the height of that?
Yeah, so we're looking at a 3-inch curb. So it would be half the height of a normal curb. And part of the reason we can't go with a full height is grading constraints. just in terms of stormwater runoff and things, like trying to go with add 6 inches would cause a problem. But with the 3 inches, we will be able to do that. So it's not as big a separation as a regular curb, but it should still be detectable, and is what we've seen used in other jurisdictions as the next way we're doing this, instead of trying to figure out the tactile pavers that we know haven't seemed to work properly.
Right.
We're trying to get this right for you.
Thank you. And one more question, and just a quick comment. I think it was Annika who said that actually, if when this all starts to move and the redesign, the Brunswick Spring Garden curb cuts have been problematic since they were redone how many years ago, that they're too flat and they are not cane or dog guide detectable. And so if there's construction happening now in areas of Spring Garden, you can't tell that traffic. So I'm hoping those curb cuts, aside from what else is going to be done there, will be adjusted because they're just too flat. They're just rolled in too flat.
I will make a note of that.
Yeah, and while I have everyone here, because I haven't had an opportunity to ask, and you probably can answer this, but the lights for the bikes, they go at the same time as pedestrians?
It depends. There's different ways they can be done. Quite often, the bikes and pedestrians will go at the same time in their separate crosswalks. So there'd be the bicycle cross ride and then the pedestrian crosswalk next to it. If it was a situation where I can't think of a situation where they'd be in the same facility. So yeah, the bikes and peds would go at the same time, but they would still be separate, I think. Though that's one of those details that we're still working out. We've only just installed our first bike signal in the municipality. So we're learning as we go. We're talking to people in various parts of Ontario that have been using these for a while, trying to figure out what the best practices are and what they have tried and what isn't working. It's a bit of a learning curve for us as well, because it's new to us, but we're trying to figure it out.
Right. And I'm as always, I'm very happy to hear that, the bicycles will have the first go without cars. I think my concern is going to be, and we'll see as we move along and start using this, is that that the bicyclists also don't make those right-hand turns if pedestrians and bicycles are moving at the same time. Because there's been a few close calls, and I repeat, I do have a tandem bike with a pilot. So, I don't want to see anyone get hurt due to vehicles or on a bike.
Because bike pedestrian conflicts are dangerous too. It's not just car pedestrian or car bike. We want to avoid everybody crashing into each other.
Yeah.
Keep everyone safe.
Yeah. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see when it all moves. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melina. Elizabeth Pugh, do you have any questions or concerns?
I do. Thank you, Hugh. Great presentation, Catherine. I can't wait to see this completed. I think I remember having conversations with David about, 5-10 years ago about this as being a possibility. So it's kind of cool to see it happening. The only question I had is actually not directly related to this project, and that is that the connection onto the Rainy Street bike lane at the roundabout is really awkward. It wasn't really taken into account, I don't think, when the roundabout went in. And you have to, a cyclist who comes through the roundabout, even if they've come through on the paths from the common, end up having to go down Cogswell Street on the street and then back up again to access the Rainy Street bike lane. So I'm just curious if you have thought about extending the project just to maybe fix that little corner, or if you could consider it if you haven't.
I was not aware of that, but I will make a note of that, and we will take a look at that connection and see if we can't make that a little better.
And while you got the guys there, great, thanks.
Yeah, we're already there, might as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Peter Zimmer.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My last meeting, I did talk about the question of our streets are not only shared by cars, cyclists, and pedestrians. we have an increasing number of people on scooters, both manual and electric powered. We have people who have mobility scooters. We have people using various electric bikes or electrified electric assist bikes. I'm wondering, in the design process, are you giving active consideration to how these get included? Because, you know, my observations on the street are many of these people sometimes will use the sidewalk space. They will sometimes use the bike lane space, and sometimes they use the street space. And you got a real complication there.
Yeah, typically, typically what happens is people who are using, trying to think of the right words, mobility aids. So if you're using like a power scooter or something because that is your way of getting around, they will quite often use the sidewalk. And by making the sidewalks wider, we are providing more space for those user groups. I know some people who use them are perfectly comfortable on the streets. That would not be me, but I've seen them on the streets too. And then within the bike lane, by going with the 3 meters, we are making it is a little wider than what sort of the minimum recommendations are from TAC and NACDO. They do say that they can go down to 2.5 or 2.8. So the 3 meters does give a little bit more space so that when you have those people using devices that have power, like the scooters and the e-bikes, there's a bit more space to pass and get around vehicles or, get around slower moving vehicles. But we don't have the space to make a gigantic facility, or even we're going with a bi-directional because we don't have the space to do 2 unidirectional ones properly, unfortunately. So we are doing the best we can with the space that we have. And that's, one of the challenges of sort of doing a retrofit in a historic city. There's limits to what you can do. Unless someone wants to pay to let me move the Citadel wall, I don't have that much space.
Right. Okay, can I ask a second question? Are the design plans now incorporating the possibility of elevated pedestrian walkways and cycleways across the cross streets, i.e. The cycle lane not having a curb drop at Sackville and another ride up at the other side? That essentially you put a speed hump in there, and the speed hump is several meters, quite a few meters wide, because it includes both a pedestrian walkway and the cycle pathway.
So you're talking about like an elevated crosswalk that's running the span
Elevated
of Sackville
crosswalks,
Street.
yes, for bikes and for pedestrians.
That is not something that we're considering at the moment. It's something that could be looked at. One of the challenges in providing speed tables, especially in a city like Halifax that's built on a rather steep hill, is drainage runoff. So of course, like on Sackville Street, all the water is going down. And if you then put a raised crosswalk going the width of the street, curb to curb, you're effectively creating a dam. So we would then have to provide drainage holes or trench drains or additional infrastructure that can cause additional problems. And you don't want to put like a hole in the middle of it, because for a cyclist, then you're creating, a dangerous situation. So they're really great in some situations. Unfortunately, on the hills that we're dealing with here, I don't know if they would work. It's certainly something that we can look at in more detail, but I think it would probably cause more problems than it would fix in this instance.
Well, I mean, problems for the works department are not the same as problems for the vulnerable road users.
No, but there are also, the vulnerable road users, of course, we're definitely prioritizing protecting people. That's part of the reason we're doing the project.
Right.
But by elevating them, if we do create damming for water, that does create more slippery conditions potentially in the winter. We have so much freeze thaw in the city that when you create areas that are going to have ponding, that's creating ice, and the last place we want ice is in the middle of a crosswalk. So that's part of the consideration as well, making sure that water can freely move out of crossing areas, and we're not creating a situation where it's gonna stick around.
We are looking at changes that are probably going to endure for 30 to 50 years. We're looking at global warming that's going to endure for 100 years. Maybe the ice is not such a big problem. Maybe we really do need to take a long-term view about how things could be, should be, and will be.
Okay, Peter, thank you. Brittany McLean, do you have any questions or concerns?
No questions. Thank you for the presentation, and I am really excited about this project. Just personally, I'm glad that the 3.0 meters is being met the whole way down. I drive a cargo bike with 2 kids in it. We're very wide load, and I definitely like seeing, when you're actually maximizing the amounts, the width of the lanes. So no questions other than that.
The 3 meters is always our goal. It's not always achievable, but that's what we aim for. Again, within the constraints that we have of existing property lines, but we've been able to do it here. So.
Okay, thank you. Douglas Wetmore, do you have questions or concerns?
Pretty much any concerns I could have brought up have already been brought up by the other members. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how excited I am for this all to happen, because coming through Brunswick Street right now is, I reached the intersection of Brunswick and Sackville trying to get to Spring Garden, and there's just no good way to get down there. As a cyclist, as a pedestrian, everything about it is just awful. So seeing all this plan, I love the idea of it, and I hope that a lot of the kind of the small details that the committee has brought up today, especially regarding the crossings, the bicycle signals at intersections. And I didn't even think about that roundabout intersection with Rainy Drive either. So thank you for bringing that up, because I definitely gotten confused at that roundabout 2 or 3 times in the past. So I'm very excited to see this come into effect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. And that leaves me. The one concern or question that came into my mind is regard to a two-way bikeway rather than 2 separate one-way bikeways. I notice around the city in the various projects and plans, sometimes the choice is 2 separate one-way bike lanes, and sometimes it's a single two-way. Is there a preference, and this is a sort of general issue, is there a preference that HRM has for one or the other, or is it purely dictated by what's there already?
It's not dictated by what's there already, because what's there already on Brunswick is 2 unidirectional bikeways on either side of the street. The preference is for unidirectional on either side going in the direction of traffic. That is the safest for everybody, typically. But unfortunately, because we are retrofitting, within the confines of right-of-way, we just don't have the space to do it properly. So the bike lane requires sort of a minimum of 5.2 meters to do bidirectional. But if you did unidirectional, we have 1.8 meters for the bikeway, plus 1 meter for the buffer on the street side, plus 1.2 for the buffer between the peds and bikes. So that's 3.2 times 2 is 6.4. So it's that much more space, and we just don't have it. I think Dave wants to weigh in on my comment. He is the AT expert. I see his hand up there. Dave, correct me if I've misspoken, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So Catherine's right. The unidirectional bike lanes are typically the best option. And the only other thing I would just add to what Catherine said is sometimes the bidirectional bikeways work where there are not a lot of intersecting streets, or we can manage the conflicts at those intersecting streets with a set of bike signals. And what's interesting about this project is that, it borders Citadel Hill for a good chunk of it. So you get that long stretch where we don't have the conflicts of all the intersections. So that's, you know, that's, and then the other place where two-way bidirectional bikeways are a little bit easier to manage at intersections are on one-way streets. So you will be seeing a little bit of that when the Peninsula Streets, the Peninsula South Complete Streets engagement comes up next month. But generally, Catherine's right. Unidirectional, kind of keeping the bike lanes on the same side of the moving traffic is typically what we try to do.
Okay, that's reassuring actually from my point of view, but it also explains why it's two-directional in this particular case. So I don't have any further questions, and I would like to thank Catherine for the presentation, and I guess we'll move forward to item 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. With regard to correspondence, I'm sorry.
So I just want to say thank you very much for your time. I do have to jump out of the meeting.
Oh, fine.
Childcare duties call.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you again, Catherine. Okay. Yes, with regard to, excuse me, correspondence, Katie, has there been any correspondence to the committee?
There's been no correspondence.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to petitions, is it Andrea or Katie that would tell us if there's been any petitions that have been brought forward?
That's me, sorry. And there are no petitions.
Okay, thank you very much. And there are no other presentations formally on the agenda, and no information items brought forward. So we're now on to item 9, which is reports and discussion from staff. And the main item here is a staff update from David McIsaac, Supervisor of Active Transportation. So David, would you like to go ahead? I understand you're going to be addressing in particular the budget, the recent budget and implications for active transportation.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. Thanks, committee. Katie, I'm going to give you a heads up that I'm not even going to try to share my screen. So if you're able to cast that presentation, I would appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely.
So look, I'm going to focus, you're right, Hugh. I just wanted to take my time today just to give the committee a bit of an introduction to this year's capital budget, particularly as it relates to active transportation. Just in addition to that, I just want to flag for the committee that there's going to be some public engagement happening that folks should be interested in June. The first one is going to be the Peninsula South Complete Streets project, and that will look at University Avenue, Morris Street, Roby Street south of University, and some sort of kind of alternative routes related to those. So there's going to be some videos to support that, some virtual engagement, and some pop-ups around. And I just saw the marketing plan last night, so folks should hear about it. I'll send a quick email around to the committee once that gets launched, so you're aware. But that's going to be kind of a big, it's going to be an interesting project, and there's a bunch of different concepts to look at, and we'll be interested in what this committee thinks. And I think you've seen a presentation on this already, but anyway, so just flagging that. And then in the middle of June, on the, I think it's the 15th and 16th, we're going to, and during the month, the latter part of June, in terms of Shape Your City, we're going to have a focus on active transportation connections in Woodside and Shearwater, and connecting the trail out there between where it ends at Woodside Ferry Terminal and Corsair Drive, but also looking at active transportation improvements on either side of that. So a little bit in Woodside, and then thinking about how folks get to and from Eastern Passage and points beyond. So again, I'll try to send a message around to the committee once that goes live. So yeah, Katie, if you don't mind casting that now. Regional Council approved the capital budget for the municipality probably about a month ago now. And typically every year at the committee, I've just kind of given a bit of an introduction to what's in there and how to find more information for folks on the committee. So that is the purpose of this presentation. You can do the next slide. So here is, here's the the cover of the plan. The budget, if you just Google Halifax budget, it will bring you to this page. There's the longer version, and then reasonably easy to at least find where those budgets are posted and to open them up. Once you open them up, it's not so easy to find the information, and that's what I'm going to try to help you a little bit with here now. I guess I'm not going to talk about operations budget. So, from an active transportation perspective, the operations budget would, cover things like my salary and the salary of the folks in our group. The operations budget would cover snow clearing and sweeping. We have a new tactical bike infrastructure maintenance group, and so all that kind of comes out of the maintenance budget. But I'm just going to kind of focus on the new builds for this one. So that capital plan, it includes a lot of things. It includes new buildings and other municipal infrastructure, but the active transportation projects are in what's called Section E, and it's labeled roads, active transportation, and bridges. Next slide, please. And these are kind of three accounts that are active transportation projects only. The first one is sometimes it's called the active transportation strategic account, and it looks like they took the word strategic out this year. And the total in that budget this year is $6,350,000. And what we use that money for is to build new sidewalks, to build new multi-use pathways. That's mostly outside of the regional center because we have another regional center budget for that. We also use that for our grant program to community groups who have responsibility for operating and maintaining multi-use pathways. These are facilities like the Shearwater Flyer, Salt Marsh Trail, the St. Margaret's Bay Rails to Trails, those kinds of facilities that are on provincial land, but the municipality's role there is to provide grant funding. So that comes from that account. And then we're also used some of that capital money for planning and design, some amenities, education and promotion work, and some of the tactical work that you see around. The other two budgets are, there is the regional center AAA bikeway budget, and this year that's at about $6.9 million. And important, I always kind of preface that one with saying that of that, $6.8 or $6.9 million, only 17% of that is coming from the municipal tax base. The other is being provided to us as part of a cost sharing agreement with the provincial and federal governments. And then the other AT budget, capital budget that is sort of AT only, is sidewalk renewals. So that's about $2.6 million, and typically that budget gets spent as part of a larger street renewal project. So if we're going into a street and repaving it and upgrading the curb, and then we would also use that opportunity to repair sidewalks that need some updating, and that's also for the the curb ramps and the Twizzies, the plates that are just before the intersection for visually impaired. that's sort of like pure AT there. And Katie, if you go to the next slide, this is a big list of other accounts which have more than just active transportation, but which, you know, sidewalk and bike facilities are a part of them. So very quickly, the tactical urbanism budget is for, you know, what you see around kind of the curb extensions and that kind of thing. The project that Catherine just talked to us about, Rainy Brunswick Complete Streets, that's kind of a separate account, but bikeways would be part of it. And much improved new sidewalks are a part of it. And then you have sort of 4 what we call major strategic multimodal corridor projects, which are again big street renewal projects where active transportation facility improvements and additions are a subsection of them. The Downtown Dartmouth Infrastructural Renewal Project is code for the project along Alderney Drive to reconnect the Sawmill River and system and to kind of clean up that area going through the Prince Albert to Portland Street, Alderney Drive intersection. So there, you know, that's kind of a major project with like new bridges for streets and daylighting the canal there, but also adding in some big active transportation improvements. Cogswell Interchange, big project. I think it's in the low hundreds of $1 million now, but again, we're getting 3-meter wide sidewalks there. We're getting some bidirectional bikeways through there and some multi-use pathways. Last 3, but we have a budget for bus stop accessibility improvements that transit operates, and so sometimes that's just a pad. Sometimes we're able to extend the sidewalk from an intersection to that new pad. Burnside, we're expanding Burnside, and you know, as part of that, we're building new sidewalks, new multi-use pathways. And then the final one there is again kind of vague, other road related works, but that's the budget that we use to upgrade street to street walkways that are in many parts of the municipality kind of falling apart. So these are municipal walking facilities that kind of go between and behind houses. If you are familiar with kind of Cole Harbor, parts of Lower Sackville, I'm forgetting a couple others, but kind of communities that was sort of a style, I guess, of community building and kind of suburban development. And in a lot of these communities, they are, you know, really the backbone of the pedestrian network. They're not on the street, they're kind of hidden, but they all got built about 30 years ago. And at some point they were kind of forgotten, to be quite honest, from a asset management perspective. And we are now kind of in year 4 of a process to identify, rank in terms of priority and upgrade them. Anyway, so my main purpose of this slide is just to say there's kind of the main AT budgets, but we also get a lot of AT improvements as part of other projects as well. Next slide. So again, I'm not going to kind of give you a lot of detail, but if you were to go into the budget book and navigate your way, you know, really the best way, this is the way I do it. I just take that CR2 *01 number and search it and get to the budget. And so this is sort of the level of detail you'll see about where the projects are and where they are, where the limits are, where the districts are, and a little bit of information on how much they're going to cost there. I think in terms of new sidewalks, we identify those projects by putting them through an evaluation and ranking process that looks at things like proximity to transit stops, daycares, services, schools, that kind of thing, and then kind of cross-reference that with where we have construction activity happening, and so that's how we come up with that list every year. I guess it's not in the presentation, but just to make the committee aware that we have an extreme pressure with new sidewalks in terms of like demand far outstripping our ability to meet that demand. And this year, council voted to add staff to the design group with the anticipation of increasing our new sidewalk budget next year. So we still don't know, that'll be a decision that council makes next year, whether they increase it significantly from about 2.5 or $3 million a year up to $10 million a year. But they have signaled that they're at least interested in that by giving us more money to hire staff so that we can build a program that I guess gets close to that amount. Yeah, so I guess just here, just to explain it, you see three what we call carry forward projects. So those are projects that were in the budget last year, but for one reason or another, we weren't able to build them. So the good news is we don't necessarily lose that money. It carries over, but we will build those this year. And I have a bit more information on Kane Street in a further slide. Then there's about 3 or 4 or 5 projects there, I guess, which are our new sidewalk projects for this year. And then you can see some work on the multi-use pathways around the municipality. So I have a slide on Portland Hills. It's a project Hugh knows very well. Caldwell Road is being renewed, the whole street. Currently for pedestrians, we have kind of crumbling asphalt sidewalks on them. So when we renew the street, we're on one of the sides, we'll renew it with a wider multi-use pathway. Next slide, please, Katie. Again, sorry, lots of information on this, but what you're seeing there is a list of all the grants that we are making to community groups around the municipality who again have that responsibility from the province to operate, maintain, build, do everything pretty much on these facilities. So HRM will typically cover about 50% of project costs, and that kind of gives you a flavor for what we're supporting this year. And then the final kind of box at the bottom is sort of the almost non-capital costs, but things that we do to support the capital projects, like wayfinding, the bike parking program. We're hoping to get some more planters out there to kind of both better separate, but also more aesthetically pleasing kind of environment. Education and promotion projects, land acquisition, which, boy, that's something I had really nothing to do with, but in the last couple of years, we've really had to get into acquiring land. So that comes out of the capital budget. My favorite one, miscellaneous integration opportunities. So that's just, sometimes things will come along after the budget gets passed where there's where we discover opportunities with projects that are happening, and we just like to keep a little bit of money there to take advantage of that. We have project planning, design, and then with one of our projects, it's an infrastructure project, we're required to have a project manager. So there's a little bit of money set aside for that. Next slide. Sure. So I'm just going to try to give you a few examples of some of these projects. So this is Main Avenue, which is in Fairview, kind of links Dutch Village Road and goes right up to Washimo Lake Road. It's got transit on it. All of the streets, no one really cared about people walking when they designed Fairview. Not only did they put it on a really steep hill, they did not build one single sidewalk. So this is an example of we're having to go back and fix mistakes from the past. On Main Avenue, in the past 10 years, we've added new sidewalk on the entire, I'm going to call it the north side, but and now we're kind of going back kind of block by block or every 2 blocks and filling in the gaps on what I'm going to call the south side, and so next year we're going to do the block there between Hillcrest and Alex, I think, and there's kind of just a picture of what it looks like now. You can see the transit stop there with the great place for people to get off. But, you know, once you get off that sidewalk, you have to do a mid-block crossing. If you are pushing a stroller or a walker or with a cane, then, you know, you're going to be walking on someone's front lawn. So we're going to fix it on that block this year, hopefully get the next block the following year, and finally on Main Avenue at least have what should have been built there in the first place. Next slide, please. This is kind of showing the Kane Street project in North Preston, and just you can kind of see there. Kane Street is where I've got that very shakily drawn yellow line. The sidewalk is going to go on that side of the street. It's a local street. It's not super busy with cars, but it's also a really important connecting street in the community. You can kind of see how it's not labeled, but on the lower right hand, that's the elementary school in the community. Then you can kind of see the daycare is there, and then the North Preston Community Center is there. Google, I love it when Google Street View gives me the perfect image for presentations. You can kind of see there where the bus, it does have transit service. You can see an example of the deluxe bus pad there, which again, kind of is just sort of almost in the middle of the ditch. And then we have a resident there kind of looking on the narrow gravel shoulder. Not only addition to the new sidewalk is we have to put in we have to replace the ditch with a piping system. And we're going to do some streetscaping through there and put a bit of curb and some connections to the bus stops on the other side. Yeah, we're excited about this project. It's been a long time coming. Next slide, please, Katie. So here's an example of a project that a community group is implementing. A lot of volunteer hours and time goes into these projects, and I cannot acknowledge the contribution of these groups enough. So right now, this is Sackville Lakes Provincial Park. So this is kind of the top of Lower Sackville, and this community association has an agreement with the province to build and maintain facilities. So the green line there is my attempt to draw what exists now, and the community group has spent 2 or 3 years planning and getting detailed design to construct the yellow line there, which kind of parallels Cobequid Road and is a little bit more zigzaggy than my yellow line would indicate, just because there's some grade there to navigate. But we are granting them, I don't have the number off the top of my head, a certain amount of money this year to build at least 2 segments of that. And they're going to get some money from ACOA, they've got some money from the province, and looking to get that fully built out over the next 2 or 3 years. Next slide, please. Final project. I was just finishing this up at about 4 o'clock today, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this project in if Hugh is here, because he's been a big advocate for this. So this is in Dartmouth, just in, as you can see by the aerial photograph, it is well served by car dealerships and parking for strip malls and that kind of thing. And but there's an amazing kind of park and trail system there, the Portland Hills system. And that sort of represented the existing multi-use pathway by the green lines there. And the yellow lines are project. And you know, right now there is sort of a substandard pathway that was built. You know, it was built, I believe, and Hugh will know the full history on this, by a developer as part of an agreement. And you know, I don't think they did the best job. So now we're going to come back and widen it, pave it, and then there's some grade challenge is kind of up there near Norm Newman is if you can see the Baker Drive label there, Norm Newman is the cross street, and there's a bit of a parking lot and a trailhead there, but we're gonna kind of make it a better grade to get down. So anyway, that's one of the projects for this year as well. And I just the other thing that's good about this one is it's going to set us up. I've kind of got a green line there as part of the Portland Street Cole Harbor functional plan. We're looking at improving AT along that street, and so making this yellow improvement is one step, but we want to kind of keep going in that direction and even connect over to Dartmouth East a little bit better. Next slide, please. So here is a different account. So I just kind of gave you a few examples from the active transportation account. We also have the Regional Center AAA Bikeway account, and you can see there's about 4 projects this year, I think, 5 projects. We're gonna do Terminal Road, which is a carryover. We've got a segment of the Dartmouth Harbourfront Greenway that, if the property acquisition gods shine favorably on us, we'll be able to build this year. A little bit more work on Hollis Street, Almond Street was approved. Dublin Street's not a good, it's actually the Liverpool Street, local street bikeway, but we're just gonna do this because Halifax Water is working on Dublin Street this year. We're going to build the local street bikeway intersection. We've got McDonald Bridge Bikeway Halifax side in the budget, and I think we put partial construction, but I think really that's going to be tendering this year and hoping to give the construction sector a good chunk of time to get ready to build that next year. And then the final project is some work at the intersection of Joseph Howe, exit 0, from the 102, and kind of making a better connection from the Chain of Lakes Trail into the Peninsula network and to the multi-use pathway on Bears Road. There's a little bit of money there for capital upgrades to existing facilities. So an example of that would be on some of the local street bikeways that we've built so far. We're doing some monitoring to see if how the vehicle speeds are and volumes. So in some cases, we need to go back and do a bit more traffic calming or upgrade them that way. So we use that account for that. And then we've got a bit of money for education, promotion, planning, design, studies, monitoring, that kind of thing. Next slide, please. So here's just, again, I think I just threw in a couple of examples. So this is an image of the Dartmouth Harbourfront Greenway. Kind of on the right, you see the Cove development. It's a little bit older. And this is sort of between the community college and downtown Dartmouth. And the yellow line there is what we're trying to build this year. It's between Parker Street and Old Ferry Road. The municipality does not own that land. We have a property agreement from Killam, which does own most of it. So that's already concluded. And then there's a little bit of land from CN that we need, and that CN is actually willing and happy to sell to us, but we're just waiting for some administration to happen to make that happen. So anyway, this is it's a gap that's existed, and it's a complicated little section, but we're very close, and then once we get that built, it will mostly connect the Dartmouth Harbourfront Greenway. We still have a couple of more gaps. I think some folks on the call will be familiar, if you drive a cargo bike or pull a trailer, of the nasty chicanes that exist just at the kind of the left-hand section of where that yellow line meets the green. Those go over the CN tracks. So we've attempted many times to work with CN over the past few years to have them change those. So I think with this project, we're going to just sort of make them part of the project and make it part of the design, and hopefully get a chicane system there that achieve CN's goals of making people more aware that they're crossing a rail crossing, but also is, accessible. And these current, they're not accessible for people pulling trailers. They're probably difficult for people with mobility devices. And anyway, I'm hoping that that's a side benefit from this project. And I might have one more slide here, Katie, maybe one or two. Yeah, okay, this is just a bit of an illustration. Again, apologies for my shaky hand-drawn lines here, but this is the Hollis Street Terminal Road project that we'll build this year. The green lines is, coming down Hollis Street, we have the bike lane. On Lower Water Street, we have a tactical protected bike lane, and those yellow lines are where we will install protected bike lanes this summer. So that will kind of get us right in, it makes the connection to the transit or to the bus station, the train station, the grocery store there. And like all these projects, it then kind of opens up a set of questions about, well, where do you go from there on Barrington Street, or where do you go there from there on the port's property down by the cruise ship terminal and Pier 21 and stuff like that. But those are the next steps. But for now, we're looking to get at least these sections extended next year. And I'm not sure if I have another one there, Katie, but next slide. No, I don't. Anyway, I just, that's it. Happy to take questions either at this meeting or again, if anybody ever has any questions about these budget numbers and where to find more information on the project, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was very informative, and I'm sure everyone was looking for their pet projects there. There'll probably be a number of questions. So again, I've got a different speaking list this time. We'll go through in order, starting with Miles McCormick.
Okay. Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much for the presentation, and Douglas, thanks for the link. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miles. Andrew Taylor.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Okay, Andrew, thank you. Milena Casanavicius.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. David, great presentation. I will reach out for some extra information, but I just want to say how excited I am to hear budgets for sidewalks. And I had a question. You mentioned something about Dublin Street and Halifax Water doing work. Mm-hmm. That's one. And then I have a follow-up question about Liverpool. When do they propose to do Dublin Street?
I believe it's this summer.
Is that all of Dublin from Chebucto to Bears?
I do not know. I will endeavor to get that information and send you the exact limits, and maybe even get a bit more information on when they plan on being there constructing.
Okay, because when they worked on Cork Street last summer, they made one heck of a mess, and there were people that were getting injured. So I want to be sure I'm on them right away. And you said Liverpool will have a bike lane put in. Was that correct?
It'll be Liverpool would have a local street bikeway. So because it doesn't have very much vehicle traffic now, the treatment there will be to increase the traffic calming and try to make safer crossings of Oxford Street and Connaught Street. And it's just that because and you have to cross Dublin Street as well, and because they're going to be digging up Dublin Street where it crosses Liverpool, when they reinstate that, we just wanted them to reinstate it to be ready for the local street bikeway. So I think there's going to be a mini traffic circle at that intersection.
A mini traffic circle?
Mm-hmm.
At Dublin and Liverpool?
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually the street that's right behind where I live. So interesting to know. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, Milena, thank you. Elizabeth Pugh? Questions or concerns?
Oh, Hugh, sorry. Elizabeth wrote in, she got kicked out. So she's
Oh,
on the outside listening, but she can't speak or ask questions. And I don't know why she got kicked out, but she sent an email to everyone. Oh, there she is. Never mind.
Yep. I just got let back in, I guess, but no, I
Okay.
don't have any questions. Thank you, David. And thank you, Milena.
okay, Elizabeth, thank you. Peter Zimmer?
Yeah, I saw the line that mentioned bus stop accessibility. I'm wondering if in the future planning, anybody is looking at the idea of increasing parking areas for bicycles at especially the bus express stops. That is, a bike can, in 10 minutes, can go quite a ways, much longer than a pedestrian can. And if there's adequate parking to leave their bike at a bus stop, they may take a combination of cycling and bus to get to work downtown. But, it needs to be planned. It needs to have land and hardware accommodating that. I'm just wondering, is that at all in the city's planning horizon?
David? David, did you hear that question? I think you
He
might.
just
you're on-
wrote in the chat that he lost audio.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
No, do you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
There he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Shall I
So
try
I think
restraining?
Peter, I think you were talking about better bike parking at transit terminals and maybe
Right.
transit stops as well. Okay, yes.
Yes.
Transit terminals, yes. There's a very inconsistent treatment for bike parking at Halifax transit terminals now. At some of them, we have bike lockers. And if you want to use one of those bike lockers, the process to get the key is laborious. At some of them, we have just, I call them cages, which are, basically you can put your bike in, but use your own lock. And then at others, like Lacewood, we've kind of got a covered area for bike parking with just kind of the posts and rings. And we're working now, there's just a meeting last month with Halifax Transit to kind of come up with a more consistent approach and to use some newer technologies and basically to really treat bicycles as part of the trip, part of that first and last kilometer kind of trip. So there is infrastructure there now, but it needs to be improved.
Okay, and I'd wonder I took part in a planning exercise about the Bedford Highway a few years back, and they were talking about express stops along the Bedford Highway, i.e. at the Mount. And I was thinking that would be a perfect place if they could have initially storage space for a couple of dozen bikes there, where commuters could leave their bikes and these intermediate stops. There are automated systems now available. It does take land, it does take power connection, but there are options that I think really should be on the agenda for exploring for the next 5 years.
I hear you.
Okay, so that was a comment that David can take on board. Let's move on to Brittany McLean.
Just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. So just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. You mentioned that McDonald Bridge, it's just like the tender would be for this year and the construction would start next year. Is that the same, the last couple slides that you showed there? Are those like going to be under construction this year? There's one with the down around, I think it's called Dartmouth Cove, like in behind King's Wharf there, where you were talking about those terrible chicanes. I was very excited to hear you say that those are going to be, because I do have a cargo bike and it is, I mean, we just avoid it because it's really difficult, especially we've got 2 children in it and it's quite heavy. So we just avoid that area. So even just on a regular bike, it's really difficult to get through. So I'm glad those are going through a redesign, but just wondering like the other ones that you're showing there, are those tenders this year or are they actually going to be construction?
They should be construction.
Okay.
There's with there's one kind of, we have to finish a property deal for the Dartmouth Cove one. That's close. So that's just a little bit of a risk there. And Almond Street's looking positive, but again, we're trying to, and we have the money there, we have the approved design, but there's also the fact that the Richmond Yards development is we're kind of trying to integrate with when they take down their hoarding and reinstate the sidewalk there, and we would build the bike lane at the same time. So there's a contingency there that we can't control. We think we can do it, and according to what they're saying right now, it should work. But again, sometimes, well, always, that kind of situation is beyond our control.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. Douglas Wetmore.
Just one quick question. I was wondering, first and foremost, thank you for throwing the slide together last minute. I was wondering if we could just get a copy of that slide shared across the committee.
All of the presentations will be available online tomorrow.
Okay, even better. Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Anything else, Douglas?
Oh, sorry, nothing else for me. Thank you, Hugh.
Okay, fine, thank you. Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of points. I just want to say how happy I am to see that the Harbor connector is going to happen, Parker Street. I was the councillor when we did the in front of the Harbor Solutions project down there and across all of that area in NSCC, and Parker Street was left on the table. We were challenged at the time. So 15 years later, I'm really glad to see that you may have got a nudge. And for me, that's a good segue into the AT Trail connector for Shearwater Woodside, because of course we're going through a land of commercial corporate entities. And I know, David, you and I had spoken around, I really wish we could find a way to bring some of that trail closer to the water, capitalize on the fact that, you know, some of those industries, particularly Imperial Oil, has winded down a lot of their activity. And then I know you and I have talked a little bit about the fact that they're just not ready yet to say what they're going to do with that. So 15 years later for Parker Street, I kind of feel like, oh, wow, I'm not sure how challenging we would be. So I'm not going to want to get that piece in the way of doing at least something that I think you're going to be coming forward with some good stuff. So the other piece of that particular engagement is we've got 2 nights that you spoke of. I know you've been really helpful in working through some of the challenges of dates. But for the committee, we have a meeting on the 16th. And I, for one, for sure, will have to leave early enough to get to both of these sessions because they're in my district. But I would encourage anyone who is on the committee, if you'd like to be part of hearing directly from residents on a project firsthand. You know, we get the information often at this committee through David and through the reports and such, but that might be an opportunity to see how it works in the public realm for the staff and for the project development on how you garner input from the public and the kinds of questions that they're asking. So just food for thought if you can make either one. David's going to come forward. I know, David, you said that with more details, but I think it could be a great experience for everyone on the committee. And Brittany, hi, good to see you. I just got your email the other day that said you're leaving us and going there. So good to see you on this one. We haven't lost you
I
entirely.
know, our paths have crossed very quickly. When I sent that email, I didn't realize you were on this committee, so that's great. It's
Yeah.
nice to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I've just seen a note on the chat. Was that from you, Douglas?
Yes, that was from me. Sorry. Would you be able to share that information again, Councillor Kent?
The information about David will be coming forward with more details. Yeah.
Okay,
so
perfect. Wasn't
just
sure if I
encourage-
missed it or not.
Yeah. No, you're still working on it. Sorry, David. I know you were going to pop in there.
Yeah, I was just going to tell folks we're going to try to do the engagement next week, but it was just too tight. Like the AT group is jamming our colleagues in corporate communications with a lot of stuff right now. So we decided to move them to what will be the 15th and 16th, I believe, and one will be in North Side and one will be in South Woodside. But I'll as soon as I should even have those confirmed tomorrow, so I'll send information around. And Councillor Kent's right. You know, it's been 2 or 3 years since we actually did in-person public engagement, and I really forgot about what it was like. And we had a session, our first in-person session, a couple of weeks ago in Lucasville, and they're valuable, is all I'll say. You really hear the various concerns and considerations and positives and worries from people, and it really kind of speaks to the kind of the complexity of the projects, but also the opportunities that people see, and sometimes we can't always achieve those, but yeah, I'm hoping that these will be some interesting meetings. I think there's some good possibilities with those projects.
Okay, anything further from you, Councillor Kent? Okay, Annika Ropel.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, thank you. Lots of dense information in there, and I feel like you answered questions as I was writing them down, then they were answered. I do have one question on North Preston. Is there a timeline on when that project's going to be happening?
Very soon. I think they're getting ready to tender it very soon. It'll, unless something dramatically goes wrong with it, it'll be built this summer.
Yeah. Oh, no, we were just hoping to plan a celebration event with the community. So we've been looking for a date.
Okay.
Anything further, Annika?
No, I feel like that was a lot of dense information, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just briefly, I have a couple of quick comments. I'm really impressed that so much seems to be happening, and the budgets seem to be improving. And I was particularly pleased, like Councillor Kent, that that missing section along the Harbourfront Trail in Dartmouth will finally be closed, even though, in fact, people have been walking through there and biking through there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it will be official and presumably properly constructed, which will be good. Also, I'd just like to thank you for getting through finally that missing section, or that underbuilt section of the Portland Lakes Greenway that comes up at the intersection of Eisner and Norm Newman. And I guess I was a little bit confused because you have it down in the budget there as Portland Hills accessibility improvements, but that section is actually part of the Portland Lakes Greenway. I know it's incorrectly titled in various places, but it's the Portland Lakes Greenway. And I was pleased to see that you at least have got the dashed green line to show that in the future, there will be a link from that trailhead to Portland Street and hopefully continuing on towards Penhorn. But I don't have, those are just comments and thank yous, and I don't have any particular questions. So does anyone else have any final questions or concerns?
I do, Hugh, if I may. I thought of
Yeah.
something after I said I didn't. David, I didn't notice East Preston on your list. I'm just curious if there's any update on what's happening with that.
Yeah, East Preston right now is we have it kind of targeted for construction in 2023. So we have some engagement to do in that community soon. We have a few different facility type options, and so we're interested to hear from the community on that. But we're positioning that for construction in 2023.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Okay.
Hey,
and
Jerem's
thank
going to
you.
own the road in about another month, I think. So that'll make it a little bit more straightforward to build that project.
Okay. So thank you again, David. That was very informative and very useful. And as you said, the presentation will be made available online. So that's good. So we can move forward briefly then to item 9.2, committee member updates. Katie, as far as I know, there aren't any. Is that correct?
There are no committee updates at this time.
Correct. And item 10 is added items. We did not add any items to the agenda. So item 11 is date of next meeting. Please make sure you have in your calendar, it's June 16th. And presumably, if I'm correct, there won't be meetings in July and August. Is that correct?
I'll double check the schedule, but
Yeah.
as of right now, I don't believe.
Yeah, I think that would be usual. Anyway, definitely June 16th, providing we have agenda items. We'll find that out later. So now we'll move on to adjournment, and I simply need a motion to adjourn from someone.
Motion to adjourn, Andrew Scanlon.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. That's no seconder required, and we can finish the meeting here. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation.